Huawei helps the Chinese Communist Party export tyranny worldwide, while mainstream media doing a disservice to the people. This is Epoch Times Evening News. I'm Angela Anderson. The arrest of Huawei Chief Financial Officer has raised a lot of questions. The main one is whether the Chinese telecommunications giant was violating US sanctions on Iran. But it's also raising discussion on alarming implications. Huawei has deep ties to the Chinese Communist Party's program for state control and exporting influence. In November, a forum on China at Washington's Hudson Institute discussed how the regime's ambitions pose a real danger to democracies around the world. And yet these dangers are not getting enough coverage in the mainstream media. To find out why, here's a special segment from our senior investigative reporter, Joshua Phillip.
The Epoch Times has recently published a 24-page special edition on Huawei. And we did this on fairly fast turnover, mainly because while a lot of people are discussing, say, security risks with Huawei, the issue of this woman who was arrested, who was a chief financial officer of Huawei, while they understand, say, the concepts of why these things are taking place and why Huawei is, say, a security risk, they don't understand the details very often. Other media organizations are reporting this, but they often quote Huawei's arguments as if they were truth, which they are often very easily debunked. One of the issues, though, is that when a lot of these news agencies talk about the, say, security risks with Huawei, they say U.S. officials claim, just as an example, they say U.S. officials claim that Huawei presents a national security risk. But then they'll say, they'll try to argue that these statements are made without evidence. And then they'll go and quote Huawei saying this is a claim made out of racism and discrimination against Chinese companies, and it's, them just trying to push us out, and it, gives this whole sob story some credence, right? But that entire argument is nonsense, total nonsense, if you understand how Chinese law works. And media agencies that have allowed that statement to stand without clarifying it have done a serious disservice to their readers and viewers. The main law that people need to understand to know why that statement is nonsense is the national security law. Under China's national security law, all data is required to be, quote, secure and controllable. The Chinese Communist Party requires companies to grant it access to their data. And so any data that Huawei would gather anywhere in the world, because Huawei is a Chinese company, regardless of whether it's doing this intentionally, it needs to grant the Chinese Communist Party access to that data as a way to abide by Chinese law. There's no way they cannot do that and still operate. One of the major misunderstandings with Huawei is whether, say Huawei operates in the United States, does it still present the same security risk as if it were operating in China? A good example of this on the, say, consumer space is if you want to have a really bad day, go look at your Chinese product's terms of service agreement. If you have a Xiaomi phone or a Lenovo computer or a lot of other Chinese-made devices, go and read the terms of services and what you're agreeing to. If you read them, when you say, I agree, click the little box, you agree to abide by Chinese law. You agree to follow their laws on censorship, on religious discrimination, on certain statements that may challenge the interests of China. And this is done by users unknowingly, a lot of times. Huawei has very complex ties to the Chinese Communist Party. It's pretty direct, actually. The one part that's most often cited is that the head of the company is former PLA and also had a position in the Chinese Communist Party, pretty high a position. Huawei also came into existence during a time when China was just starting its, say, opening up to the West. It was a time when the PLA still controlled most of the businesses in China. And so the say, origins of Huawei are deeply tied to state policy. It still to this day gets a lot of money from the Chinese Communist Party, which we've demonstrated in our own reporting. One of the main issues with Huawei is that its technologies, alongside ZTE, play a major role in the Chinese Communist Party's infrastructure for, say, high-tech tyranny. It's, for example, linked in with the Golden Shield program. This is a program for internet censorship. And it's also tied to programs for, say, the social credit system, the Chinese surveillance program of, say, monitoring your every action, your every choice in life, and then giving you a social, good or bad citizen rating according to that. And then restricting or granting you rights in the society based on how good your rating is. What's interesting now is that as part of the One Belt, One Road policy, the Chinese Communist Party is, say, doing infrastructure projects in third world countries, Africa, Latin America, Asia, and so on. It is exporting this system of tyranny, this high-tech tyranny. It is helping these countries implement these programs that allow for a type of tyranny that makes George Orwell's, telescreens that watch you all day long look like a joke. This is a system of technology meant to monitor your every single action and choice in life, to monitor your every social interaction, to monitor your, facial expressions and guess your inner emotions and inner thoughts. This is tyranny beyond what most people could imagine. And the Chinese Communist Party is exporting it, and Huawei plays a role in that.
Huawei is not only helping China undermine democracies today. The Population Research Institute reports that in the past, the Chinese Communist Party struck an agreement with the Taliban to have Huawei technologies help the Taliban establish an extensive military communication system throughout Afghanistan. And on the day of the 9/11 attacks, the Washington Times has reported that Chinese and Taliban officials signed another contract to expand their economic and scientific cooperation. So what do you think of all this? Please make sure to leave your comments below and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. And if you've enjoyed Josh's report, you may also be interested in subscribing to our newspaper. It's filled with expert in-depth analysis and a focus on traditional journalism. Thanks for your support. We'll see you next time.